Hey guys and girls, how's it going? My name is Rohit, this is Driver's DNA, and today we're gonna talk McLaren 765LT. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so of course with all this Corona stuff going around, we know the Geneva Motor Show didn't happen, and so I'm gonna do like a series of videos, sort of filling you guys in on what we know about the cars that would have been unveiled there and kind of got unveiled in their own specific manufacturer events throughout the last week and a half or so. So this is the first one in that series on the McLaren 765LT. So we finally, I know we've been waiting for this for years now, ever since the 720 came out, and the 675LT has just always been so highly regarded, and so many people love the way that it drives, and so people have always been looking forward to its successor. And with how good the 720 was with setting that benchmark as even the standard car, I know you can't really call it a standard car when it's a McLaren, but like the normal S model is that good, that fast, that comfortable. People were wondering how can you even make it better, and now the 765 is going to fill that spot. So finally we have the successor. So if you guys don't know McLaren's structure, this car slots into the Super Series of cars. So the 570, 600LT, all that stuff is your Sport Series, and Senna and P1 and all that stuff is of course Ultimate Series, because that's as crazy as it gets. So this is the Super Series of cars, and yeah, let's get started. For those of you who don't know, the name LT stands for long tail, which means that the LT cars are almost always longer than the standard car, and so in this case it's a difference of 0.35 inches, which is kind of funny that it's just a little bit, but hey, it is longer. And don't worry, there are many more improvements as we will get further into this. Let's talk engine. So the engine is of course the 4-liter twin-turbo V8 that we're familiar with from the 720S. Of course produces insane power. So the way that they name the 765 is based off of the PS power, which is, I'm assuming, a metric unit, and so that's kind of how they measure power, but for American horsepower that would be 754 horsepower, so pretty close. And of course this is mated to a 7-speed twin-clutch transmission, and the interesting thing they did with this car, which we'll get into, is they geared it more for, so of course this being the LT version, it's more of a track car, right? And so they geared it more for track use and less for top speed use, but we'll get to that in a second. So the engine, of course, kind of some technical bits here. It has a high capacity fuel pump, forged aluminum pistons, and the same 3-layer head gasket from the Senna. So that's another common theme we're going to see in this with this car, is that it's going to share a lot of pieces with the Senna, like brakes and other stuff like that, which is and we've been seeing that in the 600LT as well, and it's kind of cool to see that like top level ultimate technology sort of trickle down to the sort of lowly cars down here. And yeah, so next let's get into performance. So like I said earlier, the 720S is obviously supposed to fill the slot of kind of your GT supercar, and it did a really good job with that. With, of course, one of the biggest praises for 720 and this whole class of car in general is how visible things are, how much of a greenhouse it has, and how much glass there is. Like, you're able to see, even with the Spider and stuff that launched recently, like how well you're able to see all the way around the car. Because that's the biggest thing with mid-engine supercars, is that you end up with blind spots, especially back in the day, before rear-view cameras and other technology. Like, you had huge blind spots on the side of the engine bay, and so of course this continues that theme with sort of glass all the way around and allows you to see very well. But getting back to performance, this car of course does 0 to 60 in 2.7 seconds, which is this figure is just starting to almost mean nothing these days. It's just so insanely fast. For those of you who are keeping track, 2.7 is 1/10 faster than 720S, so it has improved a little bit, but like I said earlier, this car is a track car, and they're focusing on that sort of mid-range 0 to 124 speed, kind of getting into that sort of mid-range of speed that you're going to use more on a track, right? So it might only be 1/10 faster 0 to 60, which there's only so much, room you have to play around in that area, but the 0 to 124 is 7.2 seconds. You can get from a standstill to 124 miles per hour in 7.2 seconds, which is 1.2 seconds faster than the 720S, which is pretty crazy. So like I mentioned earlier, this is, they're focusing on, track stuff, so it accelerates faster by 15%, and with the 7-speed gearbox, it's geared more for, acceleration than it is top speed. So the top speed has now been lowered from 211 to 205, as if that mattered. But it's definitely, you can see with these sort of track variants, they're really focusing on the actual speed you'll be using on the track, and so due to gearing issues, it runs out of gears, runs out of gear before, so that's why the top speed has been lowered down. Alright, next, this is an LT car, so we got to talk about weight savings. Alright guys, so this is an LT car, of course it's going to be lightweight, but the really interesting thing with this, even with the entire 720 platform, was the 720S was already the lightest car in its class when it came out, and now they managed to shave off even more weight. So, the 765LT is 176 pounds less than the 720S, which is pretty impressive that they managed to take out that much weight. So in this case, it is under 3,000 pounds if you are one of those crazy people that don't want AC or entertainment system in your car. You can have a McLaren that is less than 3,000 pounds in 2020, which is kind of crazy that in today's day and age that there's still a few cars out there that are below 3,000 pounds. So just to give you guys a little bit of a comparison, Car and Driver weighed in the 720S at 3,161 pounds, and so obviously, no press has the 765 quite yet, so it's difficult to say how it compares, but these are all just McLaren's numbers compared to what we know from real life from the existing car. So I'll give you guys a few places where they got rid of some weight, which is kind of interesting to see what they did. Of course, I'm definitely always interested to see how they can shave off 176 pounds out of a car that already wasn't that heavy to begin with. So, first thing that they did is that you can get lightweight race seats, which get rid of 39.7 pounds. Then there are lightweight wheels, which get rid of 48.5 pounds. Polycarbonate rear side glass, so I think that's like that sort of, above the engine bay on the sides, that part that, like I mentioned earlier, gets rid of the blind spot. It's now polycarbonate instead of just plain glass like on the 720 to, of course, save weight. Probably where the heaviest part of the car is, where the engine is, so they probably tried to minimize the amount of the weight above the engine and to bring the center of gravity down. And then there's, of course, you can get a lightweight battery, which takes out another 13.2 pounds. You can remove carpet, these are not options. You can remove another 26.5 pounds if you option Senna seats. So we saw that with the 600LT, I believe. So you can get a carbon fiber hood, door handles, fenders. So, they of course had to find ways to get rid of weight with all these things, and some of the things that added some weight back, which is always interesting to see as well, is Senna brake calipers, and of course, an optional extra, which is if you choose to do Senna brake discs. But the interesting thing is, with the Senna brake discs, you can go 124 to 0 in just 360 feet. Which is absolutely crazy and will absolutely make you sick, unless you are a professional F1 driver, which I can't imagine what stopping from that speed must feel like, and I am definitely good not finding out at the moment. Alright, next, we're going to talk suspension. Alright guys, so for suspension, of course, this is, where it really matters for track use. They lowered the front ride height slightly. So another interesting change they made for suspension was using a helper system rather than the 720S's dual rate spring system. so that helped them cut out some, to kind of add more rigidity, I'm assuming, to the car and give you more feel and improve handling, of course. They also upgraded the proactive chassis control system to support track use and more heavy, long track sessions as compared to the 720. Alright, so for tire sizes, they managed to keep it the same as the 720 with 235 19s in the front and 305 20s in the rear. And the interesting, I mean, this is definitely, they're still using the Pirelli Trofeo Rs, and those are definitely a highly ranked tire that people seem to like. So it's kind of interesting. So for the LT, they didn't really go wider or anything on tires, which is probably better in theory, because I mean the handling is already so good on the 720. Alright guys, so next let's get into aerodynamics. So if you guys have seen the Porsche GT3 RS, you guys have seen definitely the vents on the fenders. That's now becoming more and more common with different manufacturers. So if you guys don't know, the vents that they do on especially on the front fenders, are designed to alleviate some of the pressure that builds up with the tires spinning in the wheel well. It causes pressure to build up, and I think remove some of the downforce on the cars. So having vents at the top of the fenders allows that pressure to get released, and so the 765 does have similar vents that you've kind of seen on GT3 RS and stuff, similar to that. And it's also 765 has 25% more downforce than the 720S. Alright, next let's talk driving feel. So obviously, as much as I would have loved to, I have not driven the car, but from those who have and from McLaren, this is what we know. So the LT is of course always the hardcore version of the GT car, and so McLaren has made some efforts, as we expected, to make sure it feels that way. So of course the chassis, everything we mentioned was stiffer, and the engine mounts have been stiffened. So there's of course also going to be less noise insulation, because the LT is definitely not necessarily a GT car, right? I mean, this is not designed to be your daily driver. So there's less noise insulation, kind of stiffer engine mounts where you can, I've heard you can really feel the vibrations through, through the car. And if you guys have seen Mr. JWW, of course, has done an awesome video on this. And he mentions that you really can actually feel the engine vibrating through the whole car, which I'm sure feels like a very engaging experience. The exhaust system has also been tuned for higher notes and kind of allows you to have a more engaging sound, rather than, and especially with less noise noise insulation, it'll definitely help to have a nice exhaust system. Lastly, pricing is expected or estimated to start around $375,000. Not cheap, but also pretty much where we expected. And so let's see if that ends up holding true when they actually do come out. The car is expected to be delivered in October, so another 6 months or so. So the interesting thing with this car is it's a limited production. So it's there are only going to be 765 units made globally, and they're expected to be starting to be delivered in October. So right about 6 months. So let's see what else happens when more of these or start going on press drives and we start hearing more about it. And if there's any cool updates, I will definitely come back to you with that. But yeah, other than that, hope you guys enjoyed. Please drop a like and subscribe, and I'll try to have more videos coming out to you guys about what other cars that have gotten unveiled. Sort of because the Geneva Motor Show didn't happen. So guys, stay safe, and thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.